Okay, I have a new topic for you, but it's not really new. It's just another layer. How many have heard of harmony with nature? You remember my Crook book, the environmental Bible that I bring everywhere I can as a prop? Do you know how heavy this 1,141-page document is? It's heavy. It's huge and it's heavy. But this document is extraordinary. Not in the information that's, of interest of read, but more of everything in this 1994 document is coming true. What's coming up in time for the next major United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change is the Convention on Biological Diversity. It'll be their 15th COP. COP meaning Conventions of Parties. I wish it meant something else so we could police these thieves of freedom, liberty, and property rights. So the theme of the last decade with the Convention on Biological Diversity or Biodiversity was Decade of Education. And the theme for the United Nations was Decade of Education. So in time for the 2030 Agenda, which remember about the 2030 Agenda, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals that we are supposed to march to in order to, by the way, it came during the Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement is, where we have to walk, bike, take public transportation, and because climate is like a thermostat, and if you get out of your car, you could turn the thermostat down, and if you get back in your car, then the thermostat goes back up, and the heat on planet Earth goes up. Well, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals were the marching orders for all of us to live a sustainable development lifestyle. And once we accomplish those 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, the United Nations goals, supposedly planet Earth will be saved. But we only have until 2030. So I haven't taken Common Core, so we are so that's like 9 years from now, right? And unless we change our planetary villain ways, life will be uninhabitable and unrecognizable. This is why we must follow the science, the global warming science, right? So I've been concerned about this thing for quite a long time, harmony with nature. As a cattle rancher, we need our land. Our land is vital to what we do, but it's also my soul. I love animals. I tear up when I think about my animals because I adore them. I do. I can't wait to get up every morning, let the chickens out, let the ducks out, and see the ducks, my 4 ducks, run across the lawn because they already know where the pond is, even though they're only a couple months old, and they're amazing. Now, they're not as friendly as the chickens, and they're not as friendly as my bull, Jefferson, named after Thomas Jefferson in the state of Jefferson. And I put together a little video of Jefferson for you guys, and it ended up being 30 minutes long. So I'm not even going to show any of it because I'll be tempted to show the whole thing of how humans interact with nature. And it's beautiful. And in some cases, maybe it needs to be changed. There might be some people out there who need to treat animals a little bit better. But for the most part, ranchers and farmers who are supposedly responsible for solving the climate crisis. How? Because our land, if we give back our land, if we put our land into conservation easements, supposedly according, for example, to the California Department of Food and Agriculture, that land that 30% more land in California given back to under conservation will, and combined with all the other ranchers and farmers across the world and landowners, if we give that land back to Mother Earth, then we will likely solve the climate crisis. This is the narrative that's being said. And as you know, cows are under attack. And unfortunately today, I I'm not going to go through livestock byproducts like I usually do. And I was so grateful that someone from Camp Constitution came up to me yesterday and said, ever since your talk, I talk about all the byproducts that we use every single day from cattle, carbon, and fossil fuel. So it really is a tool to go around and talk about livestock byproducts, because everything we're touching right now is a livestock byproduct. It should be wow that cow, not how dare that cow. But if you're going to control the world, right, you need to control everything, including cattle, but most importantly, land and water, which is why we have harmony with nature. DOA, this thing should be dead on arrival, but that's not what that means. It means decade of action. We have entered the decade of action. So I already told you, last decade was decade of education. Now we're in the decade of action. In time for the UN 2030 agenda, those 17 sustainable development goals I was talking about earlier. And are we going under? I think so, but that's not what this means. This means the United Nations decade of ecosystems restoration, and that's where we are right now. So we're going to talk about that today. And then there's this brand new hashtag that's out there, and it's hashtag generation restoration. So you're going to start seeing that as more as well. So we're in the decade of action, and they're telling us that we only have 10 years, 9, to transform our world. And to transform our world, we need to accomplish all these 17 sustainable development goals. Number 1, no poverty. Number 2, zero hunger. Number 6 is particularly interesting because it's all about clean water and restoring ecosystems, mountains, rivers, trees, forests. All these things is sustainable development goal number 6. And number 12, about consumption. Walmart is a part of sustainable development goal number 12. But 6 is super important to us ranchers and farmers, because we need our land and our water in order to do what we do, to provide the world with amazing byproducts that are brought to us by our livestock. And also the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity says we only have 10 more years to restore the planet Earth. There's never been a more urgent need to revive damaged ecosystems than right now. So enter harmony with nature. I'm going to read a few things on this presentation because there's so much information that I just couldn't slice it down without missing important pieces. So in 2009, the United Nations General Assembly proclaimed April 22nd an important day as International Mother Earth Day. Member states like the United States acknowledge that the Earth and its ecosystems are our common home and express their conviction that it is necessary to promote harmony with nature in order to achieve a just balance among the economic, social, and environmental needs of present and future generations. And we know we just heard right there that Agenda 21, because Agenda 21, as we know from previous lectures, and sustainable development is social equity, environmental justice, and economic justice, and where all those things come together, that's what sustainable development is. And that is the marching orders for the 21st century. In order to meet the basic needs of a growing population within the limits of Earth's finite resources, there is a need to devise a more sustainable model for production, consumption, and the economy as a whole, to redefine humankind's relationship with nature and coexist sustainably with the planet. The General Assembly adopted 10 resolutions on harmony with nature to promote Earth jurisprudence. Who's heard of Earth jurisprudence before? Great. They adopted an important resolution entitled The Future We Want. Alex and I were there. That was COP, I can't remember what COP number it was, but that was Rio Plus 20, the 20-year anniversary of Agenda 21, and that was in Brazil. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to get to some good stuff here. The resolution further highlighted the importance of harmony with nature for the 2030 agenda. So now we're tying all these things together and emphasizing the importance of the Sustainable Development Goals. The goal of life, they quote, is to make your heartbeat match the beat of the universe, to match your nature with nature. So they go on to say, devising a new world will require a new relationship with Earth and humankind's own existence. We recognize that planet Earth and its ecosystems are home, and that Mother Earth is a common expression in a number of countries and regions, and we note that some countries recognize the rights of nature in the context of the promotion of sustainable development. What I hope to prove to you in this conversation is that this is a big land grab. In the United States, land is very important, as you know, because it represents private property. Private property is the thoughts in your head. It's your hands. It's what you create with your hands, and you own that, whatever it is. And it's yours in this country until you give it away. That is not under this new system called harmony with nature, because it's not yours to begin with. It belongs to Mother Earth. Henry Lamb, an early patriot and discoverer of UN Agenda 21, wrote in his book, The Rise of Global Governance, the hope of land ownership is a compelling force that brought people to America from the oppression of governments around the world. The right to own property is one of those inalienable rights described by Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence. The right to own land is a natural right demonstrated through nature. In other words, a God-given right. The term own land must be defined as the power to control the use of land. Throughout nature, every member of species owns land. Think about it. Even an ant owns the land that it's on. It needs to be able to own that land to walk freely on the land that an ant walks on. It controls that space until it is usurped by another, and has that usurpation happen throughout man's history, throughout the Earth's history. So, it began this harmony with agenda with Earth Day. Gaylord Nelson, U.S. Senator for Wisconsin for 18 years, is considered the father of Earth Day. Now, Earth Day originally used to be on March 21st in 1970. That's when because it was spring equinox. It was the first day of restoration and regeneration of, spring. It's all these beautiful flowers and life. And the father of Earth Day, Gaylord Nelson, sponsored key pieces of environmental legislation, the Wilderness Act, which is all about reclaiming land so that animals can roam freely without interaction of human beings. We know that as actually this book right here, that big global biodiversity assessment, that Bible, that Crook Bible, the Crooked Bible, this was the convention that people like Dr. Michael Kaufman, beloved here at Camp Constitution, and Henry Lamb came together, putting the pieces of those conferences together to come up with the wildlands map. And we've shown you that map every year. And that's the map where, you see red zones and yellow zones and no human use zones here in the United States of America. Environmental Protection Act. We know that the EPA is all about taking more land and saying that you and I can't be on land. And for example, the Johnson family out of Wyoming, they built a stock pond for their cattle, a young family with 4 young girls, and the EPA came after them under the Clean Water Act and said that your stock pond is violating the Clean Water Act. Therefore, we'll charge you something like $16,000 a day. You must restore that pond the way it was before you put it in, which was no pond. Impossible. Anyway, the Johnsons ended up winning the case and the EPA went away, but not forever. So he also came up with the Clean Water Act. He authored legislation for national hiking trails, including the 2100 Appalachian Trail System. And after leaving the Senate, he served on the Wilderness Society, doing the same things. So we currently have a couple things going on. How many have heard of the 30 by 30 rule or the America Beautiful Act under the Biden administration? That act that just recently came out this year, obviously, is 30% more land under conservation by the year 2030. There's that magical year 2030. Now, I like to say, as goes California, so goes the nation. Because back in October, my governor, Gavin Newsom, had an executive order too. And that executive order was the same thing. Or maybe Biden used Gavin Newsom's 30% more land in California to be given back to nature under conservation easements or ranchers and farmers, willingly giving up their land forever by the year 2030. It also matches international agendas. The agenda for the next several years to the year 2030 is internationally 30% more land given back to Mother Nature by the year 2030. So back to Mother Earth Day. Rolling Stone, and there's controversy with Earth Day, by the way, which is what I wanted to bring up. Earth Day used to be on March 21st. It was a Saturday, I think. And then it was changed that year, 1970, to April 22nd. Who knows whose centennial birthday it was on April 22nd, 1970? Yes, sir.
It was either Lenin or Marx.
Vladimir Lenin, who considered himself an environmentalist. Now, the John Birch Society, who Alex works with, the John Birch Society tried to go after that, saying, hey, look, isn't this interesting that they've changed Earth Day to Vladimir Lenin's 100-year birthday? And so people are like, you know what, it's just a coincidence. But I say there are no coincidences. God has a plan, but Satan does too. So this is a picture of Earth Day in 1970. This is in Philadelphia. The city celebrated the entire week, Earth Week, organized by graduate students from the university. Now, when they changed the date from March 21st to April 22nd, one of their reasonings was, which was a Wednesday, by the way, one of their reasonings was, well, more students can go to celebrate Earth Day. I don't know, I guess they have to pull kids out of school, and that's more important than learning a good education, was to celebrate this thing called Earth Day, which was also celebrating communist Vladimir Lenin's birthday. And so anyway, you have thousands and thousands of college students from the University of Pennsylvania. Roughly 7,000 people gathered at Independence Mall, where Ralph Nader gave a keynote address there. And he gave a keynote address in the cast of Hair, a band or something, sang the hit show Big Number Air and Let the Sunshine In. Now I want to take you to fast forward to 2019. Doesn't this look similar? Doesn't that have the same feel? This is taken in Madrid. I don't think Alex hadn't arrived yet, but I was here in this march. They say 500,000 people were in this march in Madrid. I don't know if that's an accurate number, but you can see that there were a lot. Even Greta says 500 people marched in Madrid last night. This is the beginning of change. The world is slowly waking up to the climate and environmental crisis. Soon the people in power can no longer get away with ignoring science. So this is another shot. This is from the stage where everybody was trying to get to the stage for hours and hours and hours. And in the whole thing, I was taking pictures and videos for Alex and I to use, or CFAC to use, just to, demonstrate to Americans what is going on and what happens at these conferences. So I was taking pictures all day, and I don't know if you can see.
Yes.
I happened to be looking through Greta Thunberg's tweets, and lo and behold, I was like, I'm in there. I know I'm in there, and right away I saw my face. Pretty amazing. But I want to say, I'm so excited about this, because to see what I had to go through to get up so close, it was God's design.
Amen.
There was no way you could be as far back as I was and make your way through a stream of people up to the front, because everybody was trying to get up to the front, and it was chaos. But a group of a tribe came through, and everybody opened, parted the seas for this tribe coming through, Indian tribe. And so I hopped in line with the tribe, and I made it all the way up to the front. So Greta is saying here, our relationship with nature is broken. But relationships can change, she says. When we protect nature, we are nature protecting itself. And in this little video, she's petting, not that white cat, Alex, but I think it's a black something or other. But anyway, but you can see, we always see these triangles, right? When it comes to, like the sustainable, what's sustainable? We always see the three. And of course, they're all interlinked, as you can see that Greta is telling us there. So back to Earth Day, the first internationally recognized Earth Day in 1970. Across the country, nearly 10 million public school children took part in Earth Day teach-ins. Unbelievable. And then of this course, here's more students. More than a dozen students were arrested at Boston's Logan Airport on Earth Day 1970, according to the Harvard Crimson, after bringing coffins into the middle of the TWA terminal to stage a die-in. Specifically, the students were protesting the governmental construction of SST. In other words, that supersonic passenger plane called the Concorde. But you can see there, they have biocide, right? Like biodiversity murder. And then, of course, they have the all-famous racism. Isn't that convenient? So I look at these and I say, nothing has changed except they've stepped up their game. And then this, for the students at Kniford Junior High School in Kirkwood, Missouri, the first Earth Day was an occasion for protest. St. Louis as a whole celebrated the occasion with teach-ins on pollution and other environmental problems of the day. But wouldn't you look at those kids and say, this is today? Yeah. So it reminds me of being in Poland at the United Nations Framework Convention. I can't remember the COP number in Poland, but Alex and I were there, and that was just such a fun conference, because we were outside our Airbnb, and Alex's kids it started snowing because Al Gore showed up, and so it started snowing. We call it the Gore effect. And so anyway, we all ran outside and we're playing in the snow, and the snow is incredible. It's not like here in the United States. It's a little bit different. And so it was just a real thin sheet, but the real thin sheet you could roll up like one of those, I don't know, Dunkin' Donuts or whatever those chocolate things are with cream in them. What is that? Anyway, so I'm interviewing I'm taking video because this is great. It's snowing, of course, because we're at a global warming conference, another one, right? And so I'm filming Alex's kids. They speak Swedish quite extraordinarily, and I'm filming them building a big snowman before the sun comes back out and melts snowman. So frosty. So I'm filming, and I said, Marley, what is going on here? What are we here for? And he's like, oh, it's a global warming conference. And Noah says, it's not global warming, it's global cooling. Anyway. But some other kids that were at this conference, and I've shown you this before, but I think it's remarkable how things back in the 70s are happening today. So the kids are being told to wear a mask and use it as propaganda. Do you remember this video?
Oh, yeah.
This one breaks my heart. This is the Katowice Children's Choir. And I happen to be walking by and see all these children gathering and they have face masks. Remember, this is before COVID-19. This is before the face masks. But check this out, and this breaks my heart because to me, there's nothing more beautiful than children singing. At the side, there's a TV monitor on the far side, and as these children sing, it's all about biodiversity loss and fires and farmers plowing and all sorts of things. I wish I had 2 cameras so I could show you what's on that. But anyway, check this out. This is my farewell song, Soon I Will Be Gone, Gone, Gone. And she's talking about the earth. These kids are innocent. They do not deserve this. I think the biggest crime you can do on another human being is take away their own thoughts and indoctrinate them. Replace those thoughts with lies. And this is why events like this, Camp Constitution, are so important. And if I were to get to the end of my presentation right now, I would say, while they're stepping things up, we have no choice but to step up our game as well. We have 2 choices right now. We can wait for divine and hope that divine intervention happens and happens soon. Or we can step up our game and use what Daniel Webster called the power of communication, our voice, to educate so many people around the United States and the world about the truth. Why I do this? As you know, I don't get paid. I go to these conferences on my own, time and dime, which is a bit of a burden, but I do it because my why is you deserve the truth. And even if the truth isn't how we like it in the end, you still are making decisions based on the truth. And that brings me to Madrid, the Madrid conference. I was walking around, and Alex and I split up sometimes trying to figure out, what the best next thing is to capture. And I tend to gravitate towards the young people, the college students, in this particular situation, the Duke University students. And as Alex shared yesterday, much of the conversation there was about population control. In fact, one of the best memories I have is Bloomberg. I spotted Bloomberg, and Alex, there's Bloomberg, and Alex like, let's go talk to him. So we V-line for Bloomberg, who is a tiny little guy, and all these people around him, and Alex sticks his mic and he says, hey, what do you think about population control, or something like that? And he's like, oh, have a nice day, anyway. But there were a lot of conversations about population control. And I asked the Duke University students about that. I said, hey, what do you think about this conversation here that's about population control? And one of the Duke University students says to me, well, we're part of the No movement. Well, what's the No movement? Well, it's not an official thing, but the No movement is we won't be having any children. So you're how old? Well, 22, and you've already made that decision for yourself? Yes, why? Well, because of land degradation and all the things that come with more human beings, a larger population on planet Earth. So CBS proudly on April 22nd, you can see, announced that Greta Thunberg has a docuseries on the human impact on climate change, and it was in celebration of Earth Day. You can see that over there, PBS, A Year to Change the World, was filmed it and was promoting it as well. Greta Thunberg, by the way, on Twitter has over 5 million followers. Here, United Nations Harmony with Nature, to bring it back specifically to this talk. Watch now, Greta Thunberg, 2 world leaders, how dare you? And la gente está muriendo. Did I say that right, Alex? And that means in Spanish, how dare you? But look what else happened on April 22nd this year, on Vladimir Lenin's birthday. Biden decided to hold his first leader summit on climate. He also did this that day and several more other things. He also announced these things. Now, therefore, I, Joseph R. Biden Jr., President of the United States of America, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Constitution and the laws of the United States, do hereby proclaim April 22nd, 2021 as Earth Day. I encourage all Americans to engage in programs and activities that will promote an understanding of environmental protection, the urgency of climate change, and the need to create a healthier, safer, more equitable future for all people. Earlier that year, Biden was given an inaugural painting to commemorate his being president. And you see the painting, it's all about nature. Biden's inaugural painting, the oil painting, shows a pastoral landscape featuring a young couple strolling through fertile pasture land. Smithsonian said the cattle nearby, interesting, give the sense that man lives in harmony with nature. So you see this theme going on? Yeah. The basic principles of harmony with nature recognize that the international community must devise a new model of sustainable production, consumption, and economic growth that meets the needs of present and future generations. Earth's bounties are finite, which calls for the development of different and ecologically conscious economic models. In other words, getting rid of capitalism. The 2030 Sustainable Development Goals approach environmental concerns through a new lens by linking development to sustainability. The Sustainable Development Goals and harmony with nature mark the shift from a human-centered approach to one where the Earth takes the main role. Furthermore, among the indicators and monitoring framework used to keep track of progress on the Sustainable Development Goals, an important indicator to consider is indicator 12.8. I told you earlier that Walmart is involved with 12.8. It's about responsible consumption. This indicator ensures that by 2030, 9 more years, people everywhere will have relevant information and awareness for sustainable development and lifestyles in harmony with nature. So, we're going to move away from something that looks like the left on the screen, where we are stewards of God's creation, to where we are part of the ecosystem. Man has been demoted, removed from a perch he never deserved in the first place. So every year, several times a year, dialogues and reports are submitted the harmony with nature, UN's confab. The 10th report was published, which contains an outline of some of the most recent and hopeful advances in Earth jurisprudence, with a focus on ecological economics and Earth-centered law, rooted in non-anthropocentric teachings, further demonstrating a paradigm shift from a human-centered to an Earth-centered society in the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. A supplement doc, which we're going to go through it, has over 170, yes, we're going through 170 inspiring cases throughout the world where you're going to see this shift, this paradigm shift in laws and policies away from human stewardship to worshiping Mother Gaia. Harmony with nature, you're going to start seeing these kinds of terms everywhere. Environmental law, earth-centered law, earth jurisprudence, ecocentric law, wild law, animal law. The World Commission on Environment Law has a declaration on environmental rule of law. Principle 1, obligation to protect nature. That's a given. Oh, and by the way, isn't it interesting? They have 13 of these principles. I love number symbolism. So 21 and 13 you see everywhere when it comes to their documents. I find it extraordinary. Principle 13, obligation to protect nature. Each state, public or private entity, and individual has the obligation to care for and promote the well-being of nature. Principle 2, right to nature and rights of nature. Each human and other living being has a right to the conservation, protection, and restoration of the health and integrity of ecosystems. Nature has the inherent right to exist, thrive, and evolve. Principle 3, right to environment. Each human, present and future, has the right to a safe, clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. Principle 4, ecological sustainability and resilience. We hear that word all the time these days too, resilience. Legal and other measures shall be taken to protect and restore ecosystem integrity. For example, in the drafting of policies and legislation and in decision making. Principle 5, in dubio pro natura. In cases of doubt, all matters before courts, administrative agencies, and the other decision makers shall be resolved in a way most likely to favor what? Nature. The protection of nature. Principle 6, ecological functions of property. Any natural or legal person or group of people in possession or control of land, water, or other resources has the duty to maintain the essential ecological functions associated with those resources and refrain from activities that would impair such functions. So in this scenario, could you build a house on a piece of land? No. Nope. Principle 8, Principle 7, Principle 8, intra-generational, intergenerational, meaning passing it on, being consistent with the current, with people currently and then for the future. And then, of course, they've always got to add in Principle 9, which is, of course, because you cannot have sustainability and save planet Earth without having gender equality. It just makes sense. And then I'll stop at Principle 11, Indigenous and Tribal Peoples. Indigenous and tribal peoples' rights over and relationships with their traditional and or customary lands and territories shall be respected with their free, prior, and informed consent to any activities on or affecting their land or resources being a key objective. Why does that one stand out to me? Right now, there is a movement called the Stolen Land Movement. I've witnessed it at the last several conferences, the Paris Agreement, the Madrid Conference, and the Katowice, or the Poland Conference. And when protesters, when activists at these United Nations conference break out in chants and break out in their activism publicly, they always say things like this: keep it in the ground, keep it in the ground, keep it in the ground, keep it in the ground. And they always end it with stolen land. You stole our land, you stole our land, or stolen land, stolen land. And so I started looking into that. What is this thing about? And there is a movement. I'll get into it a little bit in just a second. There is a movement called stolen land. And that stolen land movement is the land that we are standing on right now belonged to a First Nation before us. And because white colonialism, oppressive white colonialism, conquered the land, they stole it. And there's a movement to get it back. So I told you this is all about a land grab. So harmony with nature, the United Nations Harmony with Nature describes Earth jurisprudence as a philosophy of law and human governance that is based on the idea that humans are only one part of a wider community of beings, not just human beings they're talking there, and that the welfare of each member of that community is dependent on the welfare of the Earth as a whole. There's even now an ecological immersion academy called For the Rights of Nature. And I just want to play just a few minutes or a few seconds of this Rights of Nature Academy. Maybe I won't. It won't play. Oh, that's too bad. Oh, maybe it'll. It was playing earlier. We'll just play it right from the internet. Oh, maybe it's because the internet went out.
So, again, my name is Margaret Stewart, and I'm the Director of the Center for Earth Jurisprudence. And with me today is our Associate Director, John Keene. And today we're going to provide you with a brief overview of what the legal rights of nature are and what it looks like in practice. Okay, and this is going to provide for you the foundation needed to better understand the more specific topics that we're going to get into in the coming weeks, including animal rights, ecosystem rights, and environmental justice or human rights. So by the end of this academy, it's our hope that you're going to have a greater understanding of this alternative legal paradigm that takes a greater consideration for the entire Earth community and not just the human component of the Earth community.
Unbelievable. So what's the impact on us? Rivers are being given human rights around the world. Oregon law is limiting expansion of dairy farms. Colorado legislation suggests that artificial insemination in cattle is abusive and that cattle should be able to live 5 years before being processed. I think they have forgotten about all the amazing livestock byproducts that they use every single day, including to do their job. So let's go into some of the things really quickly that are going on right now about human nature and nature law. In Santa Monica, California, an environmental staff and sustainability task force was created, and the City Council approved metrics for evaluating progress toward attainment of the sustainability rights of humans and natural communities guaranteed by the city's Sustainable Rights Ordinance as of 2019. The city's 2019 Sustainability Right Report was presented publicly to the City Council in February 2020. In January 2020, the Menominee tribe in Wisconsin recognized the, quote, inherent and legal rights of the Menominee River. In its resolution, the tribe recognizes, quote, the right to restoration, recovery, and preservation, and the right to be free of activities or practices, as well as obstructions that interfere with or infringe upon these rivers' rights. June 2020, the General Council of the Nez Perce Tribe of Idaho passed a resolution recognizing the Snake River as a living entity that has rights, including the right to exist, flourish, evolve, flow, regenerate, and the right to restoration. Native Americans have long held the worldview that humans and nature are inseparable. Now they are beginning to formalize this belief through Western law. Hopefully this plays.
A Native American tribe has granted personhood to a river in Northern California, making it the first known river in North America to have the same legal rights
systems and climate change have led to lower water flows in the climate and fewer salmon.
Lie.
York's main food sources. We're joined now by York Tribe General Counsel Amy Cordalis, who is also a tribal member. Welcome to the program.
I agree. Thank you for having me.
What does the status of personhood mean for a river?
What it means is it gives the right to the river to exist, to flourish, and to naturally evolve, and a right to a stable climate free from human-caused climate change impacts. What that means is that anytime the river is hurt, for example, there's a toxic pollutant that gets into the water of the river, we could then bring a cause of action against that polluter to protect the river.
So would the York Tribe be able to take legal action against polluters of the river further upstream beyond their territory?
Well, that gets into some jurisdictional issues, but we certainly would make the argument.
What prompted this? Why did they decide to take this action?
One, the Yurok people have always lived along the banks of the Klamath River, and in our creation story, the Creator told us that as long as we lived in a balance with the natural world, we would never want for anything. And we lived that way for a very long time.
Who lives in the Klamath River Basin? I do. This is the river that I've been trying to stop the dam destruction, the world's largest dam destruction project in not just national history, but worldwide history. And the narrative about destroying, it's not about restoration, it's about destroying an amazing, clean, green, renewable water source that provides beneficial use, irrigation, recreation, drought control, fire suppression, all these multi-beneficial uses for a series of dams owned by Warren Buffett and the Berkshire Hathaway Corporation. And at the United Nations conferences every year I've gone, I've asked about the Klamath River and why it's such an important project. And they keep saying it's because of the Indians and the tribes. I'm friends with the Shasta tribe, the Shasta tribe chief. Their Indian burial, their historic burial grounds are under some of these water storage lakes. And if these dams are destroyed, their burials go out to ocean. And that's a big deal to these Indians. So it's not about the Indians. Really what it's about is under this new paradigm shift, restoration goes to the tribes. And with restoration goes lots of money. So, okay, Hal is telling me wrap it up, I think. In Australia, the Parliament introduced the Rights of Nature and Future Generations Bill. It's the first piece of legislation before the Australian Parliament aimed at recognizing the rights of nature. Mexico, similar thing. Sweden, a motion was presented by the Green Party to the Parliament to include in the Constitution, namely the right to naturally exist, thrive, regenerate, and evolve, the right to restoration, recovery, and conservation, and the right to perform its natural functions. Chile had a similar thing, Germany, France, and look at this, the last one there. The Democratic National Committee, Council on Environment and Climate Crisis, in its environmental and climate policy recommendations for the 2020 Democratic Party platform with regard to biodiversity and nature, called on June 4, 2020 for the establishment of a commission similar to what? Executive Order 12852 of President Bill Clinton and Al Gore back in 1993 and 94 in that decade. The President's Council on Sustainability to explore incorporating rights of nature principles into United States law. This is Nancy Pelosi, listen closely, talking about that climate crisis. This is December 2nd, 2018 at the Madrid conference that Alex and I were at. This is my 50th birthday, and this is how I sent it, listening to her. See, a reporter is asking her a question about the Green New Deal.
When I was here earlier at the Earth Summit in 1992, so the motion on this issue for a very, very long time. When I was speaking the first time, I started the last meeting on climate cycles.
That's what we just read. read about the 2020 DNC, the climate crisis that panel that she created. In Florida, Florida wants to give rivers rights, and Earth's Law Center, which is Earth Law Center is a law firm here in the United States. Stanford is part of this law center. They're helping with the Mississippi River. Look who they're funded by: Bank of America, Patagonia, Pisces Foundation, all these major funded groups to forward this natural Earth law agenda. Just real quickly, Al, so you could see Greg, this is one of the law and policy lead. You could see in his bio that he was VP, he previously worked with Next Gen Climate Action with Al Gore. He was his VP for the Climate Reality Project. Marcia Moutry, she senior counsel, served, was an attorney for the city of Santa Monica for over 22 years. Santa Monica should know about this. And here's Dr. Kelsey Leonard, Director of Water Advocacy. Look at all her, she did a TED Talk, and I had that TED Talk, but we're out of time, which has nearly 3 million views, but look at all her degree: Harvard University, University of Oxford, PhD in political science from McMaster University. And I'll just say this, in this TED Talk, she talks about how rivers should have rights and that that tribes have been suppressed. And I'm like going, wait a minute, look at your degrees. I could have never have gotten in that school. Never. The agenda is not about being fair. It's about destruction. Nature's rights laws have been spreading throughout the world and include federal law in Bolivia, treaty agreements in New Zealand, and at least 36 municipal ordinances around the United States. In other words, friends, this is just ratcheting up. There's a growing call for oceans to have rights. And here, the Earth Law Center is now saying we're going to put it in textbooks, which I have a book here from Montana State and Boston University talking about Earth law and wild law. New York City is doing Earth jurisprudence and working with union students to bridge the disciplines of law and theology and develop a curriculum to spread this thing called harmony with nature further. The Pope released a document titled, Alex, I can't pronounce that, Querida Amazonia. The Pope stressed the deep interconnection among the care of people and the care of the ecosystem. It calls for a halt to the mistreatment and extermination by human beings of Mother Earth, and extends an invitation to protect and defend the natural ecosystem, to feel ourselves intimately united with it. Ugh. And yes, as lunatic this sounds, there is a declaration of the rights of the moon. We the people, acknowledging the unique, intact, interconnected lunar environments and landscapes which exist on the moon. So, we have a big task before us, and that is to expose this human harmony with nature agenda, because it goes at the heart of what the United States represents. So with that, tomorrow, Thursday at 3 p.m., I'm doing not an event on 201, which Alex covered yesterday, but something a little bit thought-provoking, I think, which is, we know what Event 201 was, this global pandemic called COVID-19. But I ask you, what was Event 101? And what it will be Event 301. So come join me tomorrow, 3 o'clock, Thursday, and let's talk about that.